Well, hey, Allison, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I am doing good. Thank you so much for agreeing to chat today, and it's been a while.
It has been, I know. It's been, I guess, since you were here in Asheville visiting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that we really want to get back to Asheville. That place is amazing. Well, let's just get right in. I know we have a lot to talk about today, and I'm super excited. We were just chatting before we hit record there about life and family and balance. And so I'm super excited to just hear some tips, things that you've learned from your journey with balance and that sort of thing. But before we get into that, for those who don't know you, who is Allison Puryear and what do you do?
Yeah, well, I guess most importantly, since we're talking about balance, I'm a partner. I am a mom. I'm a daughter, and I also happen to be a founder or the founder and the runner of Abundance Practice Building, where I help people start private practices. And I also have a group practice here in Asheville, North Carolina, focused on serving clients with eating disorders and anxiety.
Awesome. And so we were just chatting again about you had a post on Instagram yesterday that was just so on topic with what we're talking about, just showing your two girls going off to school, and you mentioned that you have three businesses and life is busy, and so there's a lot of things that are pulling at you. Can you just talk a little bit about what does life look like not just business but life and all of this stuff to just kind of set the stage for what we're chatting about?
Yeah, absolutely. Life looks like two kids who go to two different schools, one of which has some differences and ends up going to a lot of appointments a week. I think last week it was 6 or 7 appointments. So it's a lot of appointments.
Yeah.
My husband has a psychiatric practice, and so he gets paid when his butt is in a chair. We call that the butt and chair model.
Yep.
I have a group practice where I don't see a lot of individual clients anymore, but I have an employee who sees clients, and Abundance is it's scaled in a lot of ways. So I have a membership site.
Hmm.
So I put in a few hours every day, but I'm not having to work 8 or 10 hour days in the way I was a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I do some drop off, I do all the pickup, and shuttling around and just playing with my girls, which is really great. They're 3 and 6,
So
and yeah, it's sometimes fun, sometimes boring, to be honest.
good.
To
Right.
be playing, that's just the honesty of parenthood, I think.
Yeah.
And my child who has differences has to eat really differently, and we'll maybe talk about this a little bit as it pertains to balance, because it means I have to do a lot of different kind of cooking, which takes time and energy and meal
Yeah.
prep and research.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting balance now versus where I was a few years ago when I was working, I would say probably 8 to 12 hours a day,
Yeah.
while fitting in being a mom and
Yeah.
trying not to suck as a partner, and trying to do everything and be everything. And there was just no balance at all in my life.
Yeah.
And now I'm feeling like my priorities they're showing up every day,
Yeah. That's
and that's
awesome.
great.
That's so encouraging to hear because I'm building a business as well,
Uh-huh.
with Creative a Therapist website and private practice elevation. And, to be honest, things don't always feel very balanced in my
Mhm.
life. So again, just super excited to hear more about your journey. And I do remember when we met in Asheville, that was what, like a year or 2 years ago, something like that.
Uh-huh.
And you were in that. I remember you were in that more like ramp up stage. I think you were still building the
Mhm.
Abundance membership and all that, and taking on, I think, a virtual assistant and that sort of stuff. So it's
Yeah.
cool to see where you were and that it's possible. She did it.
Yeah, yeah, I did it.
And it's it just sounds like you're very excited with where things are at right now and how things are working for your life, and that's really awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I do feel like it's aligned. Like my life is aligned with my
Yeah.
values, and that makes a world of difference in how life feels.
Yeah. Well, how did it feel a few years ago when you were
Oh,
still working on all this?
so harried. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I found that like a lot of my workaholism was unnecessary. Even I guess in the last year, I got the flu
Mm.
and was just like, it was the bad flu.
Ugh.
And it just laid me out for a solid week. And I was so nervous coming back to my email that following Monday. I have amazing team members. My director of operations was basically like, just keeping everything afloat. And I opened my email up with all this trepidation Monday morning, and there was one email in there from Megan, my director of operations. And it was like, here's a link to the 5 emails you need to respond to. And I was like, first of all, Megan's amazing. Second of all, I was like, Megan, if I had 5 emails that required me over the course of a week, do I actually need to check my email every single day, multiple times a day, like I'm doing? And she's like, oh God, stop doing that. No, because I'd find myself responding to things that she could have responded to just because I happened to have it up.
Right.
So now, like I have, as we'll get to, like I have a schedule, like I have set times when I do certain things. So I check my email twice a week at a particular time in the morning, and then I leave it alone. And if somebody has to wait 3 days for me to get back to them, like Megan usually says, Allison will get back to you in a couple days.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, oh, instead of the constant clicking and refreshing, it was just causing more work for me that was unnecessary.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. I'm kind of in that process of like, I go through maybe weeks or seasons where I'm like, I'm really structured and like, yeah, I'm only going to check my email. For me, it's like 2 times a day. I try to do that. But some days I do find myself in there and I'm responding to this support request and this and that and blah, blah, blah. So that's encouraging. I need a little bit more discipline in that space myself. Well, let's get into, you've got 5 steps or 5 ways that folks can create balance between their private practice and life. So let's get into just the good stuff here. And I'll just kind of let you lead with this and chat through it.
Yeah, awesome. So first, I want to think about balance as like a word with quotation marks around it. Or maybe thinking about balance as a verb. Like this is not a set it and forget it thing, because life, I mean, not to quote Ferris Bueller too much in this podcast, we'll see how I do, but like life comes at you fast and things are going to shift and change over time. And so I think that there's a certain degree of flexibility that we need to have in order to truly maintain balance.
Yeah.
And I think for me, as a hardcore type A, balance is a hard thing for me to find because I just want to go full throttle on every single thing I'm involved in. Yeah. And so the way that I think about these things are wrangling a lot. So the first pillar of this is wrangling yourself. Considering the phase of life you're in. I mean, you've got a 2.5-year-old, for instance, right? It's going to be more time consuming than somebody who may be an empty nester. Mm-hmm. And to acknowledge and honor that there's only so much time you can really devote to your business.
Yeah. And
that's just the truth of it. And there's only so much sleep you might be getting some nights. Yeah. And that in this phase of life, things are hard in a specific way. I don't have teenagers yet, but I'm guessing that's a very different, specific type of hard that is going to impact business in a different way. So being really honest with yourself, being clear on your truths. So this is all, we go really deeply into this in my private practice life balance course in the Abundance Party. And what I do is I have the folks in the party do like hashtag my truth or truth and put in the Facebook party group what their truths are. And these are things that you discover just by paying attention. Like, I'm a better parent outside. My kids are better behaved outside. I'm a better parent when my phone is not in the same room as me.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. So just noticing like where you're getting kind of tied up or stressed or like I leave my computer at work when I leave. My laptop stays here. And that way I'm not compelled to be like, oh, just one quick little twitch of a thing. So that's helpful. And I have no apps on my phone that are work related, not even my email, not anything.
Wow.
So being really clear about your truths and how you work best. And next is your priorities. We don't pause to think about what our actual priorities are much on the day-to-day basis or even a month-to-month basis. Yeah. It's kind of like something bad happens in life and then all of a sudden you're like, life is short, love the people you love, you know, even though you've been putting them on a back burner for a while. Yeah. And particularly if a lot of the people I work with are also pretty type A. And so they get kind of obsessed with their private practice, which I wholly relate to. Like I remember it.
Yeah.
And so figuring out how, like, what works for you to stop your private practice obsessions. And usually a like really juicy life is the thing that makes that not the most interesting thing about your life right now. So making sure that you're living a really great life, which is another pillar that we'll get to later.
Yeah.
And
So,
then within your, oh, go ahead.
oh,
What were you
I was just gonna say, do most people? I'm guessing. I know for me, I'm totally relating to what you're saying, and a lot of it is learned through just going through it. You know, like
Mhm.
I have maybe like once a week I have that moment where my VA texts me about something that is important for the business, but I am with my son. And
Huh.
I choose to read that text and get all like, oh, we got to do this and do
Mhm.
that. And then Samuel needs something from me. And then I get stressed and I get
Yes.
frustrated and it's not his fault, but then I end up taking it out on him. And I'm like, no, that's not the way it's supposed to be. So was your journey really like just day to day learning what's working, what's not working, and really just listening to what stress is
Yeah.
telling you, what life is telling you, all that stuff?
Absolutely. Like I found I was not enjoying being a mom
Mm,
a lot. And when I started noticing like, oh, this is one of those moments where I'm like, God, just leave me alone. It's because I was on my stupid phone.
yeah.
And if that thing is in another room and I'm engaged, like I might not be thrilled about stacking the blocks again or reading the same book for the hundredth time,
Yeah.
but I'm not like frustrated at them.
Right.
And I was totally like funneling all that frustration on these little kids,
Yeah.
which, yeah. And now they'll be like, Mommy, why didn't you have your phone? Because they're not used to me having it anymore.
Wow.
And that's a good check for me of like, you know what? I don't know. Let me put this back in my purse where it belongs.
Yeah.
And then I can get present again.
Yeah. That's amazing. My son is obsessed with the phone. The second he sees it, I
Uh
want to
huh.
see pictures. I want to see videos. And
Yes.
we're like, no.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
Totally.
Cool. So I
Yeah.
totally relate. Okay, cool. Thanks. All right. So
Yeah.
what's the are we finished with that pillar? You want to move on to the next one, or you have
I think
anything
there's
else to add?
one other important thing in that
Yeah.
pillar to consider. And it's like, you know what your priorities are, but I think also knowing what you want. Like,
Mm,
you might have this priority of building a full practice, but do you know what number full is per week?
yeah.
Do you know why you want that number? Sometimes with money, for instance, people are like, I want to make six figures. And I'm like, but why?
Yeah.
Like, six figures sounds awesome. And it is awesome. But like, could you do a little bit less than that and have a better life?
Yeah.
Or is that money fueling some of the fun adventures you want to have with your friends or family?
Yeah.
So just being really clear about why you want what you say you want,
Yeah.
and even asking yourself what you want.
Yeah.
So that's just something I don't think people are doing enough. We just get in this like drone like get into this
Yeah.
routine,
Yeah.
and we got to check in more.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
good reminder. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, what's the next pillar?
So the next one is wrangling your practice. So I'm a systems geek. I find like systems make everything in my life run more smoothly.
Yeah.
And wrangling your practice looks like controlling what you can control. So sometimes people are like, I want to have 10 clients by the end of next month, but you can't control who calls you. What you can do is control your marketing.
Yeah.
So that might mean you're putting out your blog post or your vlog, or you're honing your website, or you're working on your Psychology Today. Being really clear about what the actual steps you can take are. And if somebody calls you, that's on them. But you have to make yourself as alluring as possible, and you have to put yourself out there so people can find you.
Yeah.
And so focusing on the things you can focus on, or the things you can control, like your actions. And also having a really tight schedule, making sure that you know what you're doing when. So if you're blogging, for instance, you have a blogging time in your schedule that gets done when you say it's going to get done.
Yeah.
That you're doing your notes when you say you're going to do your notes. And that you have a practice management system or something like that that keeps all of that contained and as easy as humanly possible for you.
Yeah.
So being really, systems are not fun. They're not sexy. Like nobody's really thrilled with setting up a system and using it frequently, but it makes your life so much better.
Yeah.
And it allows more time for balance.
Yeah. I'm kind of a geek, so I actually do get excited setting up systems in my business because again, it comes from experience. And I'm not a therapist, but my wife is. So I know her struggle with her notes are building up and trying to get to those and balancing all the things that she has to do. But I know, I just speak from my own experience in that I get a little bit stressed. Something's not working. And I'm like, wait, I need a system behind this. And
Yeah.
once I get out of that routine of blocking out my time and like, this is when I'm going to work on my content, this is when I'm going to work on email, stuff like that, that's when things get out of balance and I get totally stressed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've gotten to a place where in my team, we'll like if somebody's like, "Oh gosh, I completely forgot to do that," or "I did that wrong," or whatever, that's just a lack of a system. That's not a personal failure or an affront to the business. It's just like we need to build a system around that thing so that
Yeah.
it can get done properly.
Yeah.
And it depersonalizes it in a way that works for all of us, because we're all going to make mistakes. We're all human, and
Yeah.
systems decrease the rate of mistakes or the frequency of mistakes in any business or home.
Yeah. That's
So
so
yeah,
good. Yeah, it's like building a machine. You just got to constantly oil it and keep it going. And it's
yeah,
there to serve you and it's there to make your life easier. You kind of
absolutely.
disconnect from it. I like what you said about that. It's not someone's failure, but it's you focus on the system. You know,
Yeah.
don't get hard on yourself, but figure out how can this work better to serve you longer term.
Yeah. So I'll share like a system I have for getting notes done that's like maybe a little bit embarrassing, but I think a lot of people can relate.
Let's hear it.
I see my client immediately after like walking them out the door. I do their note. I'm not allowed to pee until I finish their note. And I have to pee pretty much after every client. And I'm 40 now and I have 2 kids. I'm going to ride that train as long as it's feasible. But it's a system that works because like my full bladder
Yeah.
reminds me I need to get that done.
That will keep you on schedule for sure.
Yeah. So it doesn't mean it has to be some like, check this box and it'll make this ding sound. Like it doesn't have to be an intense system. It just has to be a way of making sure things get done that works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Any more about this pillar?
No, I think we covered the bulk of that without
Okay.
going too deep. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, what's the next one you got?
So it's wrangling your boundaries. And this is one of my favorite
Ooh,
things to work
boundaries.
with. Yeah. I mean, I love it. And I love it as a therapist. I love it as a consultant because I think that this is an area where we all have a tendency to slip sometimes, particularly very empathetic, sensitive therapists. So for instance, I'm really big on a life first schedule. I want you to be clear on what you want to happen in your day to day in your life. Like I want to drop my daughter off. That means I can't get to work any sooner than 8:30. And I want to pick my kids up. That means I need to leave here at 2:30. And I'm not going to hedge on that because somebody's got to pick them up. And my husband's in a button chair model. And it makes sense in our family for me to do that. So this life first schedule, I think a lot of people, particularly people who work with kids, people who work with couples think, well, I have to work at least one evening a week because of my niche. And that's patently false. It feels true,
Yeah.
but it is not true.
Yeah.
I've worked with so many clinicians who have daytime hours and go pick their kids up from school, and it's like they're full, and people make it work during the day because their marketing's on point.
Yeah.
So yeah. A life first schedule, leaving space. Life is hard. I think that that's kind of the default for most people's lives is that there's hard going on all the time. It's a matter of how hard. And there are crises and peaks in the hardness. And I think that it's really important that we are not packed back to back like I was for years of like every 15 minutes was accounted for. And that is first of all, not a fun way to live life. And second of all, when bad things went down, I didn't have any space to manage actual feelings. And I did what all therapists know is not the best plan of just like shoving that down because there is not time to deal with it now.
Right.
And then it leaks out elsewhere.
Yeah.
So leaving some space, both in your work life and your home life, keeping all your work at work as much as humanly possible, and your home at home.
Yeah.
And I think that keeping that like watertight can be so helpful in feeling like you're not working all the time.
Yeah.
And then some external safeguards, like since nobody else is picking my kids up, I need to pick my kids up. I can't like just hack out one more email or record a quick thing for the podcast or anything like that. Like I'm bound by my time.
Yeah.
So yeah, so those are my wrangling your life or wrangling your boundaries.
Yeah.
And I take Fridays off, and that is sacred time, and there's absolutely no work going on. I used to take Fridays off with quotation marks. And I'd be like, I'm just going to real quick get in the Facebook group and answer some questions. And then literally 6 hours later, I'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, better go. Got to go get the girls.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, just think of that was the quote. It's like work always expands to the amount of time that you allow for it, and like you could fill 6 hours if you wanted to, but if you limited that to just 4 days a week, you'll fill 4 days a week, and the world won't come to an end.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I like the Fridays off thing. That's kind of I can't do it right now, but that's where I'm heading. I want Fridays off, and just to be, because my wife is off on Fridays too, and so like just to have like an extra family day or an extra like longer weekend, it just sounds beautiful to me.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. It is beautiful. My partner takes it off too, so I vote yes on all fronts.
That's awesome. Yeah, one thing
Yeah.
I've been pretty decent with as far as boundaries is the weekend. Sometimes evenings, I don't do too much work in the evenings, but I think my external boundaries are just that, because Liz is around or my son is around. I literally cannot look at my computer, and like I said earlier, if I do look at my phone, it ends in a frustrating situation. And so I'm pretty good at, come 5 o'clock, like I'm done and I'm not back into it. There's other things though that I think that I can definitely work a little bit more in the boundaries arena for sure.
Yeah.
That's good. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm getting like my own like business therapy from you right now. So
Nice. Good.
this is why I love talking to therapists on this podcast, is because I learned so much that I get to apply to my life. So it's awesome.
Yay. Good.
Cool.
So yeah, the next pillar is wrangling your life. So this is something that, as somebody who's hardcore type A and very like, I can fit one more thing. I realized that there was a lot going on in my house that like just either didn't need to be handled. So like I talk about simplifying, systemizing, outsourcing. So simplifying, for instance, I was folding my kids' clothes and putting them in the drawers all the time, right? Nobody cares if a 3-year-old has wrinkled clothes. Nobody cares. And they're going to get wrinkled in like 14 seconds after putting them on anyway, because she's like all over the place. Same with my 6-year-old. So until recently, I just didn't fold anything for the girls. I literally just threw them in the appropriate place, the appropriate drawer. And it was like a jumbled mess because they're going to go through and pick out their clothes and get them all over the place anyway.
Yeah.
So that way I wasn't like, oh, my precious folding. So I wasn't wasting like an hour of my life every week, or maybe that's an exaggeration. Probably doesn't take that long to fold kids' clothes. I wouldn't know. It's been a while. So like simplifying there. Other places like for a long time, I was trying to make meals the way I used to make meals before we had kids. I mean, this was like post 2 kids. We have 3 businesses between us. Like, why did I feel like I needed to spend like an hour and a half and create a good au jus and like make like some gourmet meal that my kids aren't even going to eat? And so we calmed that down a good bit.
Yeah.
And now I'm still having to spend a lot of time cooking because my daughter has to eat a modified keto diet, but it's like there are some cheats and some simplifications that I can do.
Yeah.
And then like systemizing. For instance, we have a Google, we run our family and my business on like Google Docs and Google Drive. So we have a whole Google Drive thing of like, okay, well, when we travel by plane with the girls, here are the things we need to make sure we have in our carry-on. We have our camping list. We have our camping meals and the ingredients for all those things. And that way we're not reinventing the wheel every time.
Yeah.
Like we just pop that sucker open and load the truck, like it's easy.
Yeah.
And that's been really life-changing for us because I'm a planner. My husband's not, but he's a Boy Scout. So I'm like, we've got these things. And he's like, well, maybe we should bring these 73 things just in case. And so it's been great to be able to like have our 73 things on the list that was already made.
Yes.
Pack it all, make it done. And yeah, so that's like a systemization thing that we do. I also have all of our bills, like where I don't have to pay them anymore. Yeah. They're all just systemized. And then outsourcing, we're in a hardcore outsourcing mode right now. So like we have a cleaner who cleans our house every week. The next day it looks trashed again, but I know like there was a day there where it looked really good, and at least I know there aren't cobwebs building up.
Yeah.
And I actually just asked her this week, like, hey, do you ever do laundry? And she's like, oh yeah, I'll do all your laundry for $20 more a week. And I was like, sign me
Done.
up. So things like that. House cleaning. There was a period of time where we had somebody make 4 dinners a night for us. That like with the shift in diet, we stopped doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're in a place where you can kind of buy your time back, I feel like we go through this balance initially in our practices or in our lives where we have more time than money.
Yeah.
And then there becomes a shift as you get more successful financially, where you can kind of buy back some of your time and outsource some things.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And what's it called? Instacart for groceries. So just like
Yes.
they bring it in, and I don't have to go to the grocery store with 2 kids who have to pee 43 times between the time we get there and the time we check out. Yeah, so things like that. And then another wrangling your life thing is strategic fun planning. My husband's really good at fun. I'm really good at planning. And we find that if we don't plan what we're going to do, then we have these wasted weekends or wasted summers. And so we try to sit down every quarter and plan out what we're going to do for the quarter. Like, when are we going to have date nights? When are we going camping? When are we traveling? All those kinds of things. And that makes a huge difference to not feel like, oh, back to the work week after parenting at home all weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we do that on a date usually. We'll just like bring a notepad and our calendars on our phones and make it happen on a date.
That's a good idea. I'm going to take that one.
Yeah, use it. It's life-changing, honestly.
Great. Cool. My wife and I we love this stuff. Like, we're kind of in this phase too. Like, we're not doing a lot of outsourcing for home stuff, but we are like finding better ways of doing stuff. And the meals thing was one thing for us that was getting hard for us to like plan out all the meals. And so like every Sunday night, or no, it was my wife goes, we usually do food shopping on Fridays. So like Thursday night, it'd be like, what do we want the next week to eat for meals? And for me, like my first thought is always tacos or burgers. You know? And she's like, well, we need other stuff. So one thing that's revolutionized our meal planning is we plan out together 6 weeks of dinners. And we have like our go-tos that are repeat ones, you know, that are simple to make. And I do most of the cooking now because of just our schedule, and my wife sees people in the evening. So I need simpler meals just for myself because she's the better cook. But just knowing that we have this checklist and it's there, and then the next week comes up and we're like, oh, we've already got all the meals there. Here's the ones. Here's what we need to buy that week. And it's made for less conflict. And it's also just simplified. Like, it's just gotten that stuff out of our brains. So I just give that to the audience. Take it. It's been life-changing for us.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a similar thing where it's just like a list, and I open it up every week and I just look at the list of things that my daughter can eat and will eat. And I just cherry pick of what I feel like out of that group of things and shop accordingly.
Yeah.
But if I didn't have that long list, it would probably take 30 minutes longer of like searching through Pinterest or, you know, trying to find something on Google. But instead I know what my kid will and won't eat.
Right.
And I don't try to get too fancy with it. And
Fantastic. So that was wrangling your life, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. And then lastly is quality
5.
time. Yeah. And quality time is something that can fall by the wayside. And when I think about quality time, I'm thinking about quality time with yourself, quality time with your partner if you have one, quality time with your kids or your animals or your parents or your friends, but just making sure that each category that is considered a priority is getting the face time.
Yeah.
Like, part of prioritizing means that things that are important to you don't get to be in the top 3, right? Like we can't maintain a top 10 or like, what was it on MySpace? Like your top 9. You can't maintain all of that at once.
Yeah.
And so I'm clear that with my kids' health issues, with just being a mom of 2 kids, friends are not in my top 3 right now. I love my friends. I'm having a girls' night on Friday. Like, I still talk to my friends and text my friends. but I can't give them as much time
Right.
as I need to give my kids right now. And there was a grieving that had to go on with that because I've always been very social. I'm super, super extroverted and outgoing. Um, but knowing that when I do spend time with my friends, it's not like we're sitting there on our phones or something.
Right.
We're actually like we're taking a hike and we're engaging and talking, or we're cooking dinner together and laughing and having a good time. Like it's making sure that we're actually all in.
Yeah.
Um, Aside from like the play date friend dates that I get to have, which you finish your sentences sometimes. But I don't count that as the quality time with my friends because it's not really high quality time.
Right. So how does that, what does that look like in your life now for schedule? Do you schedule that time, or you just kind of have this like running? These are the things I'm saying no to right now. These are the things I'm saying yes to. How does that work for you?
Yeah. So I say no to most things, which I don't love in business and life. That's just the phase of life I'm in.
Yeah.
And I have quality time every night with my partner because I'm really clear. Like our marriage is one of the things I'm most proud of.
Mm,
And I don't want
yeah.
any of that to slip. And we have enough stressors going on that it could.
Yeah.
So quality time with him every night. I walk the dog every night for an hour. And if I feel like talking, like I might want time for myself just to like listen to music or a
Yeah.
podcast or the quiet. Um, but if I feel like connecting with a friend, I'll call then. And then time with my kids, I get plenty of. So I try to make it quality.
That's just like a
Um,
given.
it's a given. And then the thing with friends is it's either last minute or it's scheduled 3 months out. For some reason, that's like the only way that I'm functioning as a friend.
Yeah.
So like tomorrow night's girls' night was scheduled this morning. And it was my birthday week, so I have a little leeway of like, hey,
Happy
babe,
birthday.
happy
It's
birthday. Can
awesome.
you, so, um, yeah. So for some reason, it's like months out or day
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's helped me too is, and my wife is we've gone through these seasons where you do have to grieve some of these things or relationships, but it's also understanding that it's okay and it's also not permanent, because I feel like
Mhm.
sometimes we're being such bad friends because we don't get to see some of our closest friends that we had when we first moved to Atlanta now live an hour away, and
Right.
that's hard to do. They've got 5 kids, we've got just one, and it's just
Uh-huh.
hard to get together, and sometimes we can kind of feel a little guilty about that, but when we do see them, it is quality and it is planned out and it does happen, but it's like giving yourself the grace to, it's okay, like this is our season and we
Mhm.
need to be closer to home, so that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not going to be like this forever.
Right.
Because at some point, our kids are going to want very little to do with us. We'll have all the space and some
Right.
grief there too, but some
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
Um, so that's just, that's what I tell myself anyway. And like what I tell myself when there are all these things in business I want to do, I have to be like, I am a baby in business and I have decades ahead of me and I can do
Yeah.
this in 10 years if I want to, or I can do it in 3 years, but like I don't have to do it today.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's been huge for me. I remember when my son was born, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get anything done ever again. And how's this all going to work? I made a big mistake starting my own business. And then in 6 months, it just like totally, we got into the flow. We got into a new flow. And then 6 months later, we got into a new one. And it
Yeah.
just, it just keeps changing.
Absolutely.
It
And that
never stays the
flexibility
same.
is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we get to move with it and make it work for us. That's the
Yeah.
beauty of being in business for yourself, is
Yeah.
we just make it what we need it to be.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Awesome.
Yay.
Well, thank you so much. This has been really helpful for me and just so good to think about and come back to time and time again. So as we wrap up, what does the future hold for abundance and Allison per year? What's on the horizon
Yeah.
for you?
Well, I love the Abundance Party, which is my subscription. So people pay a monthly amount that's pretty reasonable. I love that. Like the community in there is just insanely
Yeah.
good. And then I also have the Inner Circle, which is kind of more of a high touch offering where there's one-on-one consulting and weekly group calls and in the party, and then open office hours and things like that. So it's for people who really want a lot of support, and we'll be launching that. I believe either October or February, depending on what's going on with my daughter's health.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll see.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
And one last thing I always like to ask my guests is, what is one book you've read recently that has impacted you?
Ooh. Oh my gosh, no pressure. Um,
I like to spring that on my guests.
Yeah. So Come As You Are, which Emily Nagoski. I recommend it for anybody who is a woman or who has sex with a woman. It's just a really great deep dive into women's sexuality. And I actually saw some parallels with practice building because that's my lens. Like,
you can just pull that out of anything.
Fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah, totally. So I just really appreciated it. And it's like entertaining I listen to a lot of books on Audible, really entertaining to listen to. And it's led to a lot of really great conversations. Awesome. So yeah, really outside the box offering for you, but there you go.
I love it. Thanks for sharing that. Awesome. All right. Well, where can people find you online if they want to learn more about you and Abundance Party?
Yeah, I have a lot of free offerings over at abundancepracticebuilding.com. Podcast is Abundant. What is it? The Abundant Practice. What is my podcast called? Oh no. And then there's also the Abundance Party over at abundanceparty.com.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Allison. I appreciate you taking the time and scheduling me in a busy life that you have balanced very well.
Yay. Thank you. Absolutely. I hope that life calms down for you some in a really nice aligned way.
Yeah, it definitely will. Well, thanks again.
Sure. Take care.